Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome this afternoon to the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority Board of Commissioners meeting held here in the Commission chambers on June 17th, 2021. This is a public meeting. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and ask Ms. Robinson if she'll help us with the roll call and verify compliance with the Nevada open meeting law.
Chairperson Scott Black,
I'm here.
Vice Chairperson Olivia Diaz, Commissioner Valerie Craig, Commissioner Cheryl Davis, Commissioner Sharon Davis, Commissioner William McCurdy II, Commissioner Tick Segerbloom, Commissioner Dan K. Shaw, Commissioner Luciana Turner.
Present.
A quorum is present. We are in compliance with the Nevada open meeting law.
Thank you so much, Dominique. If you would all be so kind to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll go to item number 2 on our agenda this afternoon, public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for discussion and possible action. If you wish to be heard, come to the speaker's podium, clearly state your name and address, and please spell your last name for the record. The amount of time any single speaker is allowed will be limited to 3 minutes. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of a presentation, this will be done by the chair or by the board by a majority vote. We'll open this up now to public comment. Any individuals like to speak, please step forward to the microphone and state your name. And this would be for posted agenda items. Seeing no one, we'll close the public comment and go to item number 3 on our agenda today, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on May 20th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes. We have a motion by Commissioner Sharon Davis. Can we convert yours to a second, Mr. Shaw? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you, Ms. Hamblin. Are we able to?
Yeah, we were going to try to have one copy out there.
Okay.
And I thought we did, so it may have disappeared.
Okay. All right, we'll make sure that we have access to that information for the public. Thank you.
I would just add that it will be posted on our website as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hamblin. Okay, item number 4, approval of the agenda with the inclusion of any emergency items and deletion of any items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as published. We have a motion by Commissioner McCurdy, a second by Ms. Sharon Davis. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, that passes. Thank you. Section 2 on our agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of item number 5. If there are no comments or questions from the board relative to the consent agenda, the chair will take a motion. We have a motion by Commissioner McCurdy, a second by Councilman Shaw. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, that passes. Thank you. Item number 6, section number 3, item number 6, acknowledgement of our departed. I'll turn the time over to our Executive Director, Mr. Gressley.
Yes, Commissioners, it is a sad moment to note the passing of 5 of our residents since the last meeting. From Robert Gordon, Lawrence Dixon. From LaBertha Johnson, Daryl Montote. From Hampton Court, we have lost 2 of our residents, Felice Boykin and Michael Bates. And from Jamestown Towers, we have lost Betty Chilling.
Thank you, Mr. Gressley. If you would all be so kind to join us in a moment of silence and reflection for these individuals that we've lost. Thank you. Item number 7, approval of the annual independent audit report for period ending September 30, 2020. I'll turn it over to Mr. Gressley.
Yes, Commissioner. I'd like to call upon our Chief Administrative Officer, Fred Herron, to introduce Dale Richter of our auditing firm.
Good afternoon, Board.
Fred Hand Director, Chief Financial Officer for the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. Today we are asking for the board to approve our fiscal year 2020 audit, which is due to HUD by June 30th of this current year. Dale Rector, partner and owner of the Rector Lofton Reader audit firm, is here to do a slight presentation on the audit. If you have any questions, this time I ask Dale to come up.
Absolutely. Welcome, Mr. Rector. Thank you.
This is not a 100-page slide. This is like 5. So just want to succinctly put it in there. And really, I'm starting out by saying, what do I look at in this audit? And I want to say this. I'm very appreciative of the staff. I mean, the year and a half that we've been through, COVID, the staff stretched thin. People showing up, people not showing up. It was really good, and we're virtually on time with the audit. We have 6 months more that we could take to issue the report, but I don't see a need to do that. And a report issued late sometimes isn't good information. So very appreciative of Fred and the staff and everyone that was here that put up with us. I'm sorry?
Was there a comment from Ms. Turner, who's on the phone?
I thought I lost audio.
Oh, okay. Can you hear the proceedings now?
I hear what's going on.
Did you say you cannot hear?
I cannot.
Okay. We'll see if we can remedy that, and please keep us posted once you can hear. Okay.
Okay, thank
But she
you.
can hear me talking. Huh. Maybe I have a magic voice that only she can hear. You guys can't hear me, right? Just kidding. You guys can all hear me. That was a trick question. Okay. We'll work on that, Ms. Turner. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Okay.
Very good. Well, I would like to take you to a few of the pages. And you might have the draft report in front of you, or you might have read it. I assume it was distributed. But here's the thing you need to know. What is important in there that I need to know as a commissioner? And so I'm directing you in these slides to what you probably need to know. The first thing is there's 3 audit opinions in this audit. We audit at the level of financial statement assertion. We audit at the level of the federal government compliance. And we also audit at the level of the single audit. So you'll see 3 accountants' opinions in the report. Basically, all the opinions are clean, the exception of the last opinion, which has a finding noted 2020-001. So all clean opinions, financial statements fairly present. The financial statements that you have are complete and accurate and good and reliable. So that's the first thing you need to know about the audit. The second thing is, for a comparative analysis between the years, the management discussion analysis is the best vehicle to look at. It shows you how you did from one year to the next. So I'm going to take you to a couple of those pages, and we're going to go through those very briefly. And then I wanted to point out a trend that's been very good at the agency. In the statement of cash flows, it's a little hard to see because it's not the total amount of cash provided, but the total amount of cash provided from operations is $4.2 million. Sometimes if you're like me, my wife says, how much cash do we have? Well, I'd like to know that 4.2 million is improved in operations, and so that's what your report shows, and you'll see that on page 11 of the report. Pages 57 through 59, you'll see a prior audit finding. You'll see a current finding on 59. You'll see a summary of audit results on page 58. So if you make a note of those pages and go back and look at those later, that'll inform you of what the audit is. And then you have the CFA on page 66. This is the elevator question that you might get. How much federal assistance does the Southern Nevada Housing Authority receive? The answer to that question is $140 million. Last year, we received $140 million to help with assistance for housing and running public housing. And that number is on page 66. What's not on that page that you won't see is the amount of money you received from the CARES Act, which is $4.8 million. And so that's buried in the report as well. I think that's significant to know how much money you received from the federal government during the pandemic slowdown. You'll expend and have already received $1 million plus after the end of the year. So those are the major highlights. And I wanted to show you a comparative balance sheet. And I wanted to drive you to a couple of the numbers that I think are important. One is the difference between current assets, almost level, which means your current resources haven't changed from one year to the next, which is good. The other number I want to point to is the unrestricted net position, $43 million. It went up $10 million this year. Unrestricted by program, if you will. Public housing has unrestricted, but it's restricted for public housing use. And Section 8 has unrestricted and so forth. That's $43 million, and that's an increase, pretty good increase this year. And of the non-current liabilities that you have, your biggest one is your pension. Now you have $28 million in pension liabilities, and that's, you're able to sustain the payments on an annual basis in the operations, and that's good. The income and expense statement comparative analysis, if you look on the following page of the management discussion analysis, you'll know a couple of trends. Tenant revenue's gone down. What's happening to your stock of housing? It's being transformed. It's being ratted out, you've got tax credits now, so you'll have more and more complexes that will be renovated. Some may ultimately be demolished, but at the same time, you'll have new housing and a new housing stock, and those will be owned by tax credit partners for the most part. And that's why the rental income would go down. The governmental grant and revenue increase solely due to the CARES Act money, increase of $1.7 million. And that's a good thing. The housing assistance payments expense increased by $4.5 million, and that is something that we pretty much mentioned last year and targeted and said, hey, we have the available funds and resources. We have this in restricted funds. Let's spend it on housing, so you ramped up some of the expenditures for housing assistance payments. And that's your operating results for the year, $580,000 net loss, but mainly you had a cash flow increase of operations of $4 million, which is good. It's outstanding. Last year we had one audit finding. The audit finding was related to housing choice voucher tenant files. We randomly selected 330 files. Of the 330 files, we tested about 14 or 15 items for compliance. Of those 14 or 15 items for compliance, we found 34 errors. That was a 10% error rate. It was a significant amount of files. 10%, every 10th file had a problem. And that was last year's. This year's, what we had a similar problem. Bear in mind that we arrived and conducted the audit so late in 2019 that a lot of the systemic issues that you had in the housing choice voucher program and the file maintenance was not able to be addressed in a timely fashion because we were just wrapping up the following year. So due to lack of time. So I think that a decrease in the error rate of half, down to 5%, is significant. So you improved from one year to the next, but you still had a problem. And it was still significant enough to report it at a financial statement finding for noncompliance for the program. I have every confidence, if you keep going the way you're going, that finding will be cleared. So I wanted to share that little bit of good news, bad news, if you will. You still have a finding, but the good news is you've really improved. So we are pleased with that. And with that, I'll open up to questions or any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Rector. We'll turn it over to the board. Ms. Craig, you have a question for Mr. Rector?
I'm Valerie Craig. And my question, I wrote down, you said that the findings were 10% and then it got down to like maybe 5%. So that means they're statistically significant. just asking because I'm a dreamer, what would not be statistically significant based upon
Just
the
a
audit?
pinch more.
So, in school, they say define it, a pinch maybe, so is it like maybe 1%,
Now,
2%?
here's what we did, and we can't just do percentages, but that's a great question. You know, what's significant is 10 to 5. That's good. But where were we at with the 5? We extrapolated out the errors and realized it was material to the financial statements. Because of the materiality to the financial statements, so I'm going to answer the question, then I'm not going to answer the question. So basically, if you get the percent below 5, you should be okay, but if you're material to the financial statements, it still may be a problem. So basically, reduce the significance of the number of errors. Again, I have every confidence in the systems that are in place and the staff that's in place that you'll be able to conquer this next year.
Just one more question.
How's that for a non-answer?
Okay, but here we go again. So then I'm asking material to financial so what are you saying when you say it's material to the financial statement? I mean, I'm a geek. I don't know, so I like to get clarity and understand. What is material? Explain to me what you mean by that.
It cost us money, right?
Yeah, in a program where you received 130 million and plus housing choice, housing assistance payments revenue, receive that kind of money, then it's material to the housing assistance payments expenditure. And that is quantified at 5%, 4%, 3%, depending on what you're looking at. So that's where we're at. And you are extremely close to having this finding resolved. But great questions. Thanks for that.
Thanks for the answer.
All right, any other questions for Mr.
Chairman?
Rector?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, Mr. Shaw, yes, sir.
in your audit, did you look at our policies and procedures and practices in our financial department, and does it comply with GAAP?
Yes, what we do annually is we update the financial policies and procedures, and last year in particular, we had some changes in personnel, but we looked at internal controls, and we looked at how the controls, better than that, we looked at the internal controls related to the federal government, and we believe that it's strong and working well. So we did look at the financial policies and procedures and the flow of the information and the documentation.
And we do comply with GAAP?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Rector regarding the audit? At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the annual independent audit final draft report for period ending September 30, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Shaw, second by Ms. Diaz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Thank you, Dale, for your help. Go to item number 8, award Cook Coating, Inc., contract number C2100033 in the amount of $176,000. Turn it over to Mr. Gressley.
Yes, Commissioners, I'd like to call upon our Manager of Procurement, Johnny Shaw, to present this item. Actually, the next 2 items, I believe.
Hello, Mr. Shaw.
How you doing?
Doing well.
As stated in the agenda item in the background, March 11, 2021, Modernization and Development Department submitted a requisition for the aforementioned service. On 3/17/21, the scope of work was prepared by our independent consultant, Garland DBS, was received by our procurement department along with the scope of work from the consultant. The installation of the silicone recoat system over the existing spray foam roof, including all auxiliary products at Levy Gardens. Construction management of this project will be conducted by Garland and SNRHA's Modernization Development Department. Once the contract is awarded, the procurement department will issue the solicitation on 3/25 through the Nevada e-marketplace, which is NGEM. There were 6 companies that submitted bids, and this bidding process is an IBF, invitation for bid. It's based on price and solely price. And out of those 6 companies, Cook Coating Inc. came in with the lowest bid at $176,000. Cook is here. Representative for Cook is here if there are any questions for him to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Turn over to the board. Are there any questions regarding this agenda item or questions directly for the contractor?
Question here.
Yes, sir. Commissioner McCurdy.
Thank you, and we can, if we can just go straight to the contractor. And,
Yes, sir.
My questions will be.
Representative from Cook Coatings, if you'll come forward. Thank you.
Just about the pricing, how were you able to significantly come lower than everyone else who submitted a bid for this project? And what will be the timeline for the project? Are you expecting any additional costs relative to what you have already submitted? And just walk us through how you arrived at this point.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm Kerry Cook with Cook Coatings Incorporated. And as far as the price for the bid, it's a competitive price. We've been doing this for 38 years. I think that's how old my license is in the state of Nevada. And this roof has been put on many years ago. And they put an acrylic coating on it, and then they added a silicone coating it years later. So I don't know what the dates are to those, but it's a simple matter of repairing the existing blisters from the pour application to begin with, and then recoating it. So it goes on pretty quickly. We've done applications like this for JCPenney's to the tune of about 6 million square feet. So we're very familiar with the process. It's a very simple process. So we have no problem with our bid price.
In terms of the timeline, he was curious what the completion time frame is for this type of project?
I think we're told that we have to apply it within 60 calendar days. We're a little concerned about the weather at this time. I guess we'll be talking to Frank about coordinating a schedule, but we have no problem completing it within that time frame.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think that we should definitely have a schedule with any project, and I've worked on construction projects in two different industries, and I think that it would be, not out of the realm of, this responsibility for us to have, at least a timeline in which we are expecting a project to be done. Do recognize, after listening to the contractor, that you are very familiar with the work, but I just think for us here at the board, on the board, we should definitely have expectations on when it will be done.
Okay.
Realizing that there are, climate complications
Certainly.
at the moment, but just something to consider as the board moves forward with this
Okay.
project.
So within that 60-day window, that's per the contract. Once you commence the work, what would be the time frame for completion?
So we would offer up a bar chart schedule, weekly activity, delivery of materials, work sections of the roof that we'd start and then finish at. We'd like to start early in the morning. I don't know if that's possible on a project like this with the seniors living there, but we have to work that out. But, I'm thinking it's going to somewhere around 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks, and we'll provide a schedule of activity for that.
Okay.
And it takes 2 months to get material right now. Everything is very difficult. COVID, storms, force majeure in some of the supplies. So it's at least 2 months before we can acquire the material on site.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Cook?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
And that was just my actual follow-up, being that we are in a global shortage for materials. I just, was wondering, are we going to begin with, signing the contract once we know that we have the materials in, or are we going to commence, moving forward with the prep work that's necessary, that I'm sure is going to need to be done for that contract, and just, wanting us to think through all of the implications that will go into said project.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Gressley, would it be appropriate for either Mr. Stafford or Mr. Shaw to speak to those internal elements of the procedure?
Yeah, we'll have Mr. Stafford speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Because this is part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Frank Stafford, Director of Development Modernization. We request a schedule from the contractor, and that's at the pre-construction conference that we set up after the contract has been signed and turned over from procurement to Del Mod. So the schedule will be approved by the contractor. We have to issue the NTP for the contract, but if there's going to be a delay in material, something to that effect, we may have a separate NTP, and there may be one to order the materials, and then we get a time frame when the material is going to be in, then we'll set up the construction. So sometimes those could overlap. If we know the material is going to be here in, say, 45 days, then probably 2 weeks before that, we could start prep work or what have you to get the job done. But there will be a notice to proceed issue with the approved schedule.
That's sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Thank you for the questions, Mr. McCurdy. Any other questions regarding this agenda item?
Yes,
Oh.
I do. This is Commissioner Turner.
Yes, Commissioner Turner.
Yes, I do see that this project is also Section 3 eligible. And so I wanted to know, moving forward, if we are going to choose them as our contractor, would there be any jobs available for Section 3 workers?
Mr. Shaw, would you come forward? So Mr. Shaw indicated that the request for a proposal was based on a price proposal. Is that what you indicated?
Invitation for bid.
Invitation for bid based on a price, lowest bidder in terms of price. Will you speak to the Section 3 aspects of this, if it's relevant to this particular contract?
So Section 3 is relevant to this project because it's federally funded. So it's up to the contractor to let me know if there's any positions that are available for Section 3 opportunities. And so I'll be in contact with Mr. Cook
Okay,
throughout the project.
okay.
But it's not, I just want to make clear that Section 3 is not mandated, it's not mandatory. It's to the greatest extent feasible that we are to provide the residents the opportunities for projects.
Absolutely, and it should always be encouraged, advocated for, explained from an education standpoint for all contractors to have a clear understanding of the Section 3 program and how they can weave and incorporate that into their operations relative to positions that could be available.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ms. Turner. And we had a question. Can you tell us, Frank, what is NTP? I think you said what it meant, but notice to proceed. Okay, gotcha. All right. We live in an acronym-rich world here at the Housing Authority, and so thank you for helping us. Any other questions regarding this agenda item? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
So move.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner McCurdy, a second by Vice Chair Diaz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Ms. Turner?
No, I'm not in opposition. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I just had another question before. I really didn't understand what he said. They will not, because it is eligible, but are they looking to do that? I didn't hear the correct answer.
So he may want to elaborate, but basically what Mr. Shaw said is that there will be ongoing communications with this particular contractor and other contractors as well on different projects about weaving in Section 3 opportunities for our residents where applicable. Again, he stated that it's not mandatory, but we absolutely are advocates for maximum participation to the degree possible based on the scope of the work, the technical skills required, and aligning those with residents that have those skill sets and are interested in engagement in those projects. So would you add anything else to that, Mr. Shaw? Was that pretty clear? Okay. So he will be conferencing with Mr. Cook with Cook Coatings to identify any and all opportunities to include Section 3 employment for residents. Is that a true statement? Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, now we'll go to item number 9 on our agenda this afternoon. Approval to award the Organizational Leadership Edge contract number C21038 in the amount of $40,600. Mr. Gressley.
So I'm going to defer to Mr. Shaw again.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shaw.
The background, on April 22nd, Procurement Department received approval requisition from Human Resources from qualified vendors to provide labor, materials, and equipment as required for the Executive Recruiter Services for the Executive Director and the Deputy Executive Director. Pursuant to the scope of work, and the approved requisition of $20,000. An independent cost estimate for the RFP was created. On June 2nd, the procurement department completed a review of the evaluations and determined that the organizational leadership edge received the highest score of 2,703 out of a maximum score of 3,275 among the four firms that responded to the RFP. Action request. Let me just give you a brief summary. This particular solicitation, I headed it myself because of the urgency and the priority that we need to get this company on board. So on April 22nd, as I stated, we went out, solicited the RFP. 3,920 firms were contacted nationwide through the NGM system. 10 firms reviewed the solicitation, and the 4 firms responded to the RFP with a not to exceed value of $40,600. The organizational leadership edge and their local subcontractor Heritage Consulting, which is a woman-owned minority firm, and they're local here in Las Vegas. And so the procurement department conducted and completed the background check for this organization, and they cleared the background check, as well as the organizational edge is solely owned by Mr. Stanley VQ of Valley, Nebraska. He can discuss how the proposed task will be split between the 2 firms when he comes up to speak. Just to give you a little bit of background on his company, he has over 36 years as a field policy and management individual for HUD. He's assisted over 200 housing authorities across the nation. In the past 4 years, he was awarded contracts by 28 housing authorities. He's conducted or contracted with approximately 48 housing authorities for executive staff that were hired by various housing authorities. Mr. Kwai has contracted with approximately 16 large housing authorities, 23 mid-sized housing authorities, 9 small-sized housing authorities during his tenure. He's here, Mr. Coy is here to answer any questions from the board, as well as his subcontractor, Ms. Olivia Brown, is also here to answer questions from the board.
Okay. Before you go, Mr. Shaw, are there any questions relative to the procurement from the board before we go to the firm? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's great to be here from Nebraska, despite the heat. It's a welcoming process, and I lost my cell phone last night at the hotel. Otherwise, it's been a great visit, John. I've known John for some time now. It's good to see him again. Johnny is an excellent procurement person. He was extremely responsive on a number of requests that I had, and I greatly appreciated that. He's pretty well summarized my firms. I would certainly take any questions. I've had a long history with HUD, did a ton of executive recruitment at the HUD level, just completed, depending upon when this one culminates, will be somewhere between the 50th and 52nd executive search. Every one of those has been a success. There have been no failures. I base that on a running scorecard that I keep of selected candidates based upon were they there a minimum of 4 years, and was the board fully satisfied with their performance in that job. So there's a lot of characters in our industry, as I think you know from some experiences, that there are, it's so critical that we put together an ideal candidate profile that meets the board's desires, that we do excellent background checks, and then we really find the great fit for your organization. And one of the processes there we, on our team, will be asking each of you as board members to respond to a survey that I've got, which will help us develop that ideal candidate profile. And then when we come back out to meet with you, we will firm that profile up, and we will carefully go back to that profile at every key decision point in the planning process as such. I would like to introduce my two cohorts. This is my referee team, but in black and white. They coordinated today from Heritage Consulting. And we have Olivia Brown, who is co-owner of Heritage Consulting, and then Kenita Lewis, who is with the firm also. They both have extensive experience in marketing, outreach, diversity recruitment, leadership development, organizational management, and they will be a nice complement to the 50 years of affordable housing experience, I guess, that I hopefully bring to the table. I'm not sure if John's outdone me on that or not, a number of years, but we're both right up there, and both are important. That background in housing is extremely helpful, because I'm going to know a lot of directors around the country that I can go to for reality checks. If we see something on a website that looks questionable, I'm going to know directors in that state we can go to for confirmation of any issues that may be out there. They've done a ton of work, more so on the private sector, but that's good. We can kind of bring that public sector, private sector backgrounds to the table, and you will have some great candidates for the position, and we will end up with a very successful contract when it's all said and done.
Great.
So.
Well, I have a few questions, but I'll
Sure.
turn to the board first. But will you, Stanley, will you tell us how to pronounce your last name?
It's Quay.
Quay. How do you spell that?
Quy.
Quay. Okay,
Right.
thank you, Mr. Quay. Turn over to the board for questions. Mr. Shaw.
Owning a current business and trying to recruit employees to that business in this particular time has been very difficult.
Yes.
What do you see as the pool of qualified applicants? Is it large, small? Are we going to have a difficult time recruiting a qualified individual?
We're not going to have a difficult time, but the number of candidates is clearly down in the last year and a half. Three things are going on in our industry, one of which obviously COVID has reduced the number of people that are making moves right at this time. The second issue is we've not done a good job as an industry in bringing in young talent into the industry. So as the third thing's going on is a lot of directors are retiring, and so 2 years ago, I'm going to take Portland, Maine, a very beautiful city that I've worked in. It was an excellent organization. 3 or 4 years ago, I would have had probably 30 applicants for that job. I think last year, we had like 14 applicants, and really only 3 that I felt were excellent candidates for the position. So it is down a little bit, but again, we do an aggressive job of marketing, and both Heritage and myself, we're going to be out there really hustling. I know I keep a running tally of about 100 candidates that are looking nationally for jobs. I've got 7 jobs out there on the market right now, so I'll be letting each of them know about this opportunity. We'll be on LinkedIn. We'll have recruitment brochures at conferences. We'll put information on your website. We welcome candidates from the board. If you have a candidate in mind, please let us know about that candidate. Track record has been really good amongst the hires. Very much a 50-50 balance of men and women that I've hired. Same thing, minority, non-minority candidates. So got a good track record of in that regard as well. But yes, it's more challenging than 2 years ago, but this is a great opportunity in this community. And I will want to talk, John and I talked briefly on your salary compensation. What I will do is share some national data with you for agencies in your size range. We might need to think about bumping that up just a little bit. I was just up in Tacoma, Washington on their executive hire. I don't expect you to be in this range, but they are capping out at 309. And I know you're not looking in that kind of a range, but the salaries have been going up for the reasons that I've cited already around the country. So, but if you get a great director, that's the best investment you'll make this year is that salary bump to get that outstanding executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Kwai. Any questions, Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Quay, my question is more along the lines of timelines and process. So is there a very specific process that you use, or do you take board feedback? Because we recently, through our health district, we went through a process and we had a fair amount of say as a board as to how we wanted the search and what we wanted to be part of the whole process. And then we ended up kind of running into some issues, and we said, well, this is the toughest time anybody could leave our org. Why not lift who we have at the helm, right, through COVID? But wanted to kind of get a feel from you. Are you very about, it has to be the way I've done my recruitment process, or do you give and takes on some aspects, one, and then two, just how quickly do you see us being able to, I don't want to push it and rush it and miss somebody that we could bring on through rushing through the process. But I think some folks kind of want to get a feel for how long it'll take us to get a quality person here.
Great questions. The average or standard is 12 to 14 weeks. That allows for usually about a 5-week marketing and outreach time frame. You're going to get your candidates typically in that time frame. So that's kind of the norm as far as time frames. I have a very defined structure and process, but board ownership is absolutely critical at every step in the process. And at each of these key decision points, you're going to be engaged as a board. This process that I've got in place, I've used almost from the very first recruitment that I ever did. It works extremely well. One of the keys is up front that we put together as a board this ideal candidate profile from the surveys that you respond to and from the input that I get from John and his team. What that does, that helps us to start to build a little bit of consensus as a board up front on what we're looking for, because you can have 9 different board members with 5 different ideas of what's a great leader or a great manager or what does this agency really need the most. So we'll start to build that consensus, and that's going to make every step after that more efficient and more effective as we go down the road. But as we design interview questions and conduct interviews and rate and rank candidates, we're going to run that information past the full board. If you have thoughts and perspectives, we want to hear those, because again, we want this to be board ownership of the process. Now, having said that, in the first 2 levels of the 5 levels, we will work with I believe, a smaller strategic planning committee. And that committee then will be kind of our day-to-day contacts as we go through putting together the marketing plans and the announcements and the salary package, and actually going through that first phase of marketing and batching the applications and reducing that down to a best qualified numbers. The level 3, 4, and 5 of the process involve the full board. The full board as such. There's one other issue, and I think maybe John has talked with you about this with your open meetings laws. You know, how can you handle an executive search? Every state is unique on that, so I don't tend to say, well, this is what you should do, because your attorneys working with your team will get that sorted out. And I know John's looking at a couple of different scenarios on how you can make sure and engage the full board, but not necessarily have every final decision on finalists made in open sessions. So I leave that to John and your staff on that as to how to make that work.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Kwai or Heritage Consulting specifically? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to this process and this opportunity. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion from the board for approval.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Diaz, second by Commissioner McCurdy. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes, and we're ready to get started. Send us those surveys. We'll let you know what we think.
The announcements will be out next week.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Kwai. And fine ladies from Heritage Consulting, we look forward to working with you. Thank you. All right, we'll go to item number 10 on our agenda, approval to increase contract number C21022 to Protective Force International, LLC, in the amount of $30,000. Mr. Gressley.
Yes, Commissioners, this is on the agenda. We wanted you to be aware of this and to lend your approval. We have a number of different locations where we employ security. We've not been fully satisfied with the services we're receiving, and as a result, we've looked to an alternative, at least to carry out the remainder of this fiscal year. Well, I believe it's till the end of this fiscal year, but I'll ask Mr. Shaw to come up and explain exactly what this covers, but I believe it's just to the end of this fiscal year, but he may correct me.
Afternoon, Johnny Shaw. As Mr. Gressley stated, we've had some concerns with our existing security company. And so we do have an RFP on the street right now for security services, and it's actually under review by the evaluators. But the company we have in force now is a joinder that we're allowed to bring on board prior to the solicitation, the end of the solicitation and the award of the new contract for the new security company. And so we've had them on board for a few months. This particular increase is for $30,000, but it takes it over the executive director's limit of $150,000, and it does take us to the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Shaw regarding this contract proposal?
Yes.
Ms. Craig.
Just a little small thing. I don't make an assumption, just want to know. A joinder, does this mean in conjunction or an abutment?
It's what we call a piggyback contract.
Okay.
And so I believe it's either the city of Las Vegas or the city of North Las Vegas. And so we're piggybacking off of their contract.
Thank you. I wrote it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. Any other questions for Mr. Shaw regarding this contract item?
Yes. This
Oh.
is Commissioner Turner.
Hi, Ms. Turner. Go ahead.
Yes, again, I pose the same question as, have they considered using the Section 3 workers, since this is a eligible contract for Section 3 workers?
Yes, that's part of all of our contracts, and I've been in discussion with the existing security company as well as the new company that will be bringing to the board once the solicitation is finalized.
So on a side note, well, actually relative to Ms. Turner's, Commissioner Turner's question, periodically we would receive reports on Section 3 participation. Perhaps we can schedule another one of those perhaps at the next meeting if that's feasible, just so we can get a snapshot of those participation levels, and as we continue to advocate and communicate with the contractors to see how well we can advance that participation.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. McCurdy.
Along with the report back from the participation levels, it may be meaningful to the board to understand what has been the outreach to the residents as well, so that we can have a true snapshot as to the participation, weighing it against the outreach. That's something that I would also request, and I'll have questions for the company.
Certainly.
as well.
So in terms of the Section 3, if we can just take a comprehensive look at, so we have some new commissioners, if you can give us a 101 on that program and what, both the contractor communications and advocacy and education process, as well as the outreach to the residents in addition to just the raw numbers of participation, I think would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
And questions relative to the contractor, Mr. McCurdy?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Councilwoman, did you? Yeah,
Oh,
I'll go on.
okay, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So currently with Protective Force International, we've already had them working, correct?
Yes.
With our agency?
Yes.
And how satisfied are we with their performance compared with the other one that we needed to pivot to this company because we weren't really satisfied with the other one? How are they performing? I kind of wanted to get a sense of, are we highly satisfied? Are we, can we still get someone better? So I just wanted to get a sense of how the performance aspect is going.
So far, there have been no complaints from staff with their performance, and so I would say that we're very satisfied at this point.
Mr. McCurdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's a great question, Councilwoman. I was also thinking about really doing a deep dive into the individual residencies just to see what the people think about the representation that they're getting in terms of security. But from what I am reading on the agenda, the current security company would not be responding to the more at-risk properties, and now this newer security company will be engaging in dealing with the more hard to deal with properties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And why are we allowing a company that have already received a contract to do the work that they signed up to do, which is provide security regardless of how tough or not the property is, and bringing in a new, less experienced company in terms of relationship with the residents to now go into that situation? And the reason why I say that is because it's the same situation that we would see with local law enforcement, if you will, sending like a freshly graduated officer into a very complicated, culturally diverse community, and we should be more responsible than that. So I would like to know is if the current security team is here, I would like to know what they're seeing, why they're asking not to meet their obligations that they signed due to the contract, and why would we be so willing to allow a new organization to go into a community that the current security team wouldn't want to go into?
Okay.
Mr. Gressly will.
Mr. Gressly.
Let me answer that, please. First, I don't believe the firm that we're dissatisfied is here to answer that question. So let me answer one part of the question. They're performing satisfactorily at a level that we can accept in certain locations, and we're allowing that contract to come to its conclusion. And that's why we're back out to bid, because we want to bring in a more qualified firm going forward for all of our security services. So rather than get into a contentious arrangement with them, perhaps resulting in some liability to the agency, it's in our interest to allow that contract to run itself out with less responsibility. And I think that's a prudent thing to do for the business, quite frankly. The other firm is here and can speak to your concerns.